spot will get you eventually, Azale. Don't you worry. Okay, so this is the 4.18 patch notes. These are the new skins coming out. Ymir, certainly not Amaterasu, Fenrir, new Daji skin, and a new Nike skin. UI updates. They're redoing some of the spectator mode stuff that doesn't work anyway, and server roll-ups, which meant that you were getting games late at night with people who can't speak your language. Good, they're getting rid of that. Working my way around this Macallan 12 Scotch. So the bug fixes, mostly it's just like some sound stuff, but there are a couple of gods that are getting nerfs as a result of it. Specifically Op, Wash, and Hades. Their attacks were actually wider than they intended. They were 5 units wide rather than 3. That's being fixed. Isis's and Ryzen's are intentionally 5 wide. Actually, Isis's third hit is wider than that. That's actually intentional. That's going to be listed for where the characters have a bigger than normal attack. Same like with Sylvanas. And Zeus is also getting that same indirect nerf. Zeus actually gets hit a little bit harder because he's more reliant on his basic attacks because he can apply stacks of his charge. His passive that can then detonate, so it's his 3. He's reliant on it. Now it's going to be harder to get those stacks. Anquile, whatever the hell it's pronounced as, is getting overall buff. They're reducing the magical defense on it a little bit in exchange for some physical power. This is really good against close-in magical gods. Or characters who are going to be diving magical characters. You just still have to be careful with it. Or you're against Al Kwong. It will silence every, I want to say 60 seconds for 1 second if they're close by. I think it's like 15 units. Not that far. This is now at least lets you box a little better with it. A little more power. Still a niche item at best, but at this point maybe this can get some play. Before at 2560, it just wasn't very good. Atalanta's bow is still trash. They increased the attack speed 5%. It's only 30. It's 30 attack power, 25 attack speed, and the passive on it. Every time you hit minions or gods, you get movement speed. But it's meant to replace Haste and Vitalis for hunters. It's still worthless. This needs to be much cheaper. Or you need to reduce the cost no matter what, and maybe 35 power, and we can start talking. Chronos Pendant got 150 gold reduction. This was kind of on the fringe of viability. There were just always better options. Now this is a little bit cheaper. You can fit it into a build a bit more easily. It's still more expensive than most. Gods like Hell are going to like this quite a bit, especially if you get more offense-oriented. My build for Hell does not, but, to each their own. And Witchblade is the last item that's being changed up, which is kind of they removed the lifesteal and replaced it with cooldown reduction. So now it's giving you health, cooldown reduction, attack speed, and movement speed. And it has a passive that reduces enemy attack speed within 55 units of you. That's the same range, for those who don't know, of how far a basic ranged attack will go. So if you can hit someone with Witchblade, you're being slowed by this. Cooldown reduction is way better than the lifesteal. The lifesteal was only useful maybe on Kali and Bakasura because they got the attack speed, and it was for the mirror matchup-ish. The lifesteal was weird on it, always was. Especially because this is supposed to be like a solo or a support item because it can be built by anybody. Cooldown reduction is much more universal, much more useful, and I think this will start to see some use as a counter to some of the hyper carries, some of the in-hand hyper carries, especially Al Kwong again, Kali, stuff like that. So the item changes here are really going to hurt Al Kwong a bit, although kind of ignored at high levels of play anyway, and low levels when you can't fucking deal with the time bomb element of him, where he's going to be really good at some point. You just have to keep him down. If you can't keep him down, then you're screwed. Onto the gods. Belgian. Sorry. RTO is getting nerfed again. The light tap / dash is getting a cooldown reduction. Now it's 17 seconds, which is quite a long cooldown. And her passive's protection debuff is getting nerfed again. She's good. I didn't think she was broken before. She kind of peters out late game, in my opinion. Especially if you start building her like you're supposed to. She's really a solo or even a jungler still. And I'm not sure if she was ever really a good support character. This doesn't help. I think she'll still be okay. I don't know if she really needed a nerf, to be honest. I think as players learn to deal with her more, she would have been fine. Camazot's mostly, again, at higher levels of play. Screech and Vampire Bats. Vampire Bats is scaling less, so it's now it'd be 10%. Scaling is being reduced by 10 at each rank, and then Screech is getting a 10 flat reduction overall. So he will have less of his early game poke, and Screech, the physical power buff, is actually kind of big, but this was 270 plus 130% physical power. Now it's 230 plus 130%. So actually a pretty big series of nerfs. He still has, scrolling back up to him, he still has ridiculous sustain in the jungle. He can stay out forever. He'll still have a place. I just won't be as good now. And Kusum Bow is getting a pretty big buff, actually. Sumo Slam is going down to 12 seconds at all ranks, so he's going to be able to peel and disrupt a carry or a mage all the damn time now. This is usually what you built second. You usually built a Nana Kappa first, Sumo Slam second. Now, you might want to even get Shell Spike second because, well, you're not going to get the cooldown reduction because you get it all at all ranks now. And Watery Grave is now on a 75-second cooldown. That's actually a really, really short ult cooldown. That's the same cooldown as Amaterasu, who seems to get her ultimate off every team fight. That's the same as Bologna, who seems to always have it. This is the same cooldown as those abilities with a similar impact. Watery Grave is going to be if you have a full CDR build and Genji's Guard and you're getting hit by magical because you're going to be in their face the whole time. Watery Grave is going to be up every 41 seconds. And it does 700 damage plus 100% scaling. So prepare to spam Kappa in every game, not just in the chat, but every game. Ratatoskr is also getting a buff. They're dead on about this. Early game was always good. He kind of struggled late. I don't know if I like this. Increase the physical power scaling on Flurry. Not a big deal early. I don't know if it's even that big of a deal late. It's 20% more of your physical power because it does hit 4 times. So this is now 8 to 24, but 8 to 24 instead of 8 to 16. I can do math. 10 more physical protection shreds, so he's going to do a lot more damage late game. If you have a hyper carry hunter, that's going to help them out a lot too. So Ratatoskr is going to be good in for example, like a Neath mid or something like that, especially because Flurry is the first ability you're going to level most of the time. I actually thought that they should match or maybe give slightly less magical shred along with Flurry to kind of help his teamfight utility. They kind of went the same path, but just increased his physical utility so he can create more plays for himself. Scotty, to the surprise of absolutely no one, is getting another nerf. Permafrost is being shrunk down. 16 is not that big. 24 is gigantic, freaking enormous. But now it's actually going to be 16 to 20, so it's quite a bit smaller now than it used to be. And Calder's dash damage is actually now... It's getting a smooth curve, but less damage overall, from 100 to 150 to 70 to 130. I think Scotty's still going to be viable. Like a lot of the Calder does a lot of damage, but the Permafrost is going to be bigger, but it's still going to do a lot of damage. It just won't get as many ticks off, which is not a big deal. It's going to be able to disrupt team fights a little bit less. Will this mean that people are going to start picking other hunters that can team fight, like, say, I don't know, coming to mind Medusa, Rom, although Rom doesn't affect team fights in the same way. He's more traditional hyper carry. Are they going to see rise? Yes. Is Scotty out of the meta? I doubt it. Terra is getting a nerf. Monolith, one of the most annoying CCs in the game. The gigantic AoE root is being removed. It's now going to slow. For the record, and they had to spend like 5 minutes talking about this at high res when they were doing the patch notes. This doesn't create a field, so if Terra shatters the monolith and it's in its damaging phase, so it heals or damages based off of if Terra shattered the monolith. If it's currently damaging and you walk into it while it damages, it will not slow you. So it only checks when it's detonated. And to make up for the 30% slow, by the way, this was a 1 second route, so this is a longer slow, but you still have more counterplay, agility, wing blade, stuff like that. Monolith is now going to be a better tanking item. It's going to be harder to take down, 3 to 5. This is overall a nerf. If they wanted to keep her power level the same, they should have increased her healing just a bit. Maybe instead of 3 to 15, 4 to 20 would have been nice. That would have probably helped her out. But it's all good. Thoth, they still haven't nerfed evade and punishes damage because it's still fucking insane. It can hit for like 700 on a squishy when he's maxed it out, and it's his stun. It does shift Terra's playstyle a bit, Kirra, but I think it's overall a nerf. But that's fine. She was performing quite well. Final Judgment is now doing a lot less damage, 20% scaling. Now it's actually not one of the stronger ults. It's still very strong and has some of the best range. It's just not quite as good, but it does do more damage if you fire it off quickly. Instead of it starting at a quarter of its base power, so it's max rank at 640 plus 120% scaling was its old stat. Now it's 100% scaling. Now it's going to go start at 40 and 20 for every page of the book that has been completed. And the last god is Tyr. Tyr is getting a mana reduction, which not that big of a deal for him. I don't think this is really going to change anything. 10 less mana at all ranks. And the change stance, he's actually getting 2 seconds reduction at level 1 and still caps out at the same. But I believe even if you don't have any points in this, you're still going to be able to swap stances 2 seconds faster, which might be why they reduce the cost on Fearless. So overall, I think Tyr probably isn't viable in solo lane. I think he still gets pushed out. He still has some hard counters. I do think he's the best pick into Nike, who is underrated overall in the community, but she's not. She's hardly dominant in lane. Excuse me. So that should wrap it up for patch notes. Feel free to check out the Twitch channel. If you're seeing this on YouTube, if you're seeing this on Twitch right now, feel free to ask some questions. I'm going to stop the video here, and feel free to ask away.